Hello. Hey, what's going on, guys? All right. Let's see. I've got some stuff to share with all of you today. Let me just go ahead and get this open here first. We can take a look. So, how's everybody doing today? Happy Tuesday. And let's see. Couple house cleaning things. Marine is here and Mafu are here in the chat. Hey guys, both of them have submissions they're going to be taking a look at here today. Let me also just quickly go here and do this just to get us going here. But how's everybody doing? Let's see. This one. I've got the RG Epion review, which I meant to have for you guys yesterday. But unfortunately, my son has a cough. So, and his birthday is this Thursday. So with his birthday and birthday party coming up, I wanted him to take a rest yesterday, trying to get rid of his cough before his birthday. So I was at home with my son yesterday. So I wasn't able to film and therefore wasn't able to edit and upload either the review of the RG Epion. But I got the review recorded, edited, and then after this live stream, that review of the RG Epion will be going up, and that should be up for you guys this evening. So look forward to that, checking that out if you guys are looking forward to it. Some of you may have already seen the live stream builds. You probably already have a good idea of what I'm going to say for the most part, but if you want to see the full review, that'll be up in just a little bit. Okay, I think I did what I was meaning to do there. I kind of like did what I wanted to do while I was in the midst of talking, and I feel like I may not have, but that's fine. Okay, so we're going to take a look here. First of all, just a brief introduction. If this is the first episode of Gunpla Critique that you guys are seeing, basically in these videos, I'll take a look at some works that are submitted by my Patreon supporters. So as always, a big thank you to everybody on Patreon. There's different tiers that we have. One of the perks is that you can join the Discord. Another perk is that you can submit works here for Gunpla Critique. So to everybody there on Discord, or to everybody there on Patreon, thank you guys all so much. And I apologize that this episode is coming kind of late. I mean, they usually tend to be late. This one's, I feel like, especially late because I posted about it. We needed to gather some more submissions, and then I've just had a lot of stuff going on. I feel like, I don't know, but without making any excuses, just sorry guys. So I feel like other things keep coming up, but we're getting to it here today, and eventually I will, let's see, get this on screen for you guys so we can take a look at Brian's entry. I wanted to take a look at Brian's here first because he's been waiting the longest. He sent in these images like right after, it was either like later that day or the next day or something, the previous critique episode. He like just missed it. So I felt very sorry for Brian and he was waiting until like the next month's episode, and it's been quite a while. So Chris was never sent a Discord link. Yeah, it's always been an issue. I don't know why, Chris. I've never figured it out. Just send me a message as a reminder. I'll send you a Discord link. I don't know why. The Discord link from Patreon has just never worked for mine. I don't know. So usually what I have to do is once I get the email notification that somebody new joins on Patreon, then I have to go in and like just manually send them a link. It's supposed to be automatic, but for some reason it's just never worked. I should just try to set it up again and see if it will work this time. But yeah, if any of you guys are have joined Patreon and are not on the Discord and would like to be, and just either haven't got a link or the link didn't work for you, just let me know, and we can work it out. But all right, always putting my family first. Yeah, it's not necessarily that the delays for this episode were 100% due to family. I won't use that as an excuse. It's just been I had to prioritize stuff, and I should prioritize my wonderful Patreon supporters more, but there's other things getting in the way. Like, for example, I would want to do this last Friday, but I opted to live build the Ep.29 instead. So I figure people will also be interested in seeing that. Anyway, Brian's build here of the mass production type master grade Hyakushiki. He said, this is one of my builds from last year. It's the P Bandai mass production type. It came in that ugly curry yellow. I repainted it with 4 different shades of gold using Tamiya TS spray cans, then a light wash Pentaline and waterside decals. Okay, so it's spray can painted. And actually, that's kind of interesting, the fact that he was able to do 4 different colors of spray can gold. I wouldn't have guessed there's that many colors available in Tamiya spray can gold, but let's see. Or, well, yeah, he said 4 different colors of gold, right? Yeah. 4 different, yeah, there's 4 different shades of gold. So, I mean, the 2 different colors are very apparent right here. There's that like kind of white gold and this more kind of pure gold. Although, let's see. Anyway, I won't worry too much about just like trying to differentiate the shades of gold. It is noticeable that there are different shades of gold, and I think it works out pretty nicely. I will say I am more of a fan of the more kind of rich yellowy gold, more so than the lighter white gold, I will say. I feel like that just kind of fits the design a bit more. I will also say that definitely the gold looks nice, although you can tell like in some areas it looks like maybe the paint was a bit thick or something. Because of gold, because it needs to look the way it looks, you have to be really careful with the way that you paint it. I don't know. No, I think overall the application of it looks pretty nice. Although I'm not as big of a fan of like the dark gunmetal color. Just trying to look through these. Yeah, that medium gray is not like a metallic kind of color, is it, right? But the inner frame is in that kind of gunmetal color. I'm always a big fan of trying to get some like contrast with, like, if you're going like really metallic, like gold for the armor, then contrasting that with a non-metallic color for the frame. I think just like a flat gray, or even like a really matte finish, just medium dark gray, I think would look pretty cool, just like for the contrast of it. The purple accents are interesting. I do like it. I think it's kind of cool on the feet. Not as big of a fan of the purple on the gun though. It's very like Lakers colors. It just kind of gives the sense of like looking like it's supposed to be like a kind of sports team custom or something. Doesn't look too. I mean, it's very stylistic. And then you have the purple up here for the hoses. So I mean, like the purple as an accent color, I think is interesting. Although it's just the placement of it, I think, is a bit. It doesn't quite make sense. It doesn't quite work in some of the areas. It works better in some areas than others. I think it works well, like for the feet necessarily. The pistons in here maybe, but not so much like on the gun and for the hoses on the back. I feel like, but you guys can let me know what are your thoughts on that. Is it in the forearms as well? Let's see. But for being spray campaign, I mean, I think overall the finish looks pretty good, and the decal placement is nice, and the application of the decals just in like you don't see the outlines or any silvering or anything on the decals, which looks good. What was I looking for? Yeah, the forearms. I was looking for a picture of the forearms to see if the purple's there too, because it doesn't look like purple. That looks like it's more like a reddish color there on the forearms. So I'm confused by that, but it almost kind of looks like the paint is kind of like scratched off there or something, but I'm guessing that's just because of like the lighting. You have a little bit of like this hose part up here at the top is like not pushed in all the way, so you can kind of see like a little bit of that red there. All right. Just kind of looking back at the chat just to check if Brian's here. If he is here, he can offer some commentary for us as well. But if you're asking in the chat, have you ever thought about doing a collab with Mecha Gaikotsu? I'd be open to. I mean, if there was a cool idea. I've never talked to him before, so never had any conversation whatsoever. But But yeah, yeah, definitely a fan of this more yellowy gold and not so much the lighter gold. But I mean, I understand the inclination to want to do like multi-tone gold. But again, I think it's mostly just like the color placement. Same thing with the purple that I'm not as into. But no, I think it looks pretty nice. Using the black for the panel lining works well. But again, I think there's also opportunities for some nice like just dark gray or just kind of a medium gray color for in some of these details. Like for example, something like the what do I want to say? Kind of like background decals, kind of background details, as I kind of like to refer to some of these bits where like in and around here, not this whole section at the top, although I mean, that's one possibility, just like the inside part of that being gray. Another one would be like, gonna be kind of harder to see. Let's see, where's a better picture? Or like here on the underside of this like flap here on the side of the shoulder armor, this detail on the underside of there, having that be in gray. I think it's a really detailed kit. And because of the design of the Hyakushiki armor, like it's very segmented and that like there's a lot of open spaces within the armor, like especially like in the legs in particular. But you know, there's like a lot of like kind of background details in the armor that I think could be good opportunities to paint in some like gray just detail, just kind of match the frame, like up inside of here, for example. Where else? Like here in the legs, like on the inside. I'm trying to find a good picture to show. Like on the inside of there, like up in here or something like that. It's kind of hard to see how much detail is like kind of really there that could be painted, but let's see. Zero said you would be like Siskel and Ebert of Gunpla reviewers. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Purple and gold means Lakers colors. I mean, yeah, I definitely do get the sense that that's what was intended, and so that's why the gold was used as an accent color. And yeah, it's kind of difficult. It would be kind of difficult to know where to place the purple. So again, I get the tendency to want to put some more of the purple in and around on some of the other different parts of the kit, because I'm trying to think to the original kit. I know like on the Hyakushiki, the chest part is in that dark blue color. This center part here, I'm not sure if that purple, I think it would have been a little too much of that bright metallic purple here to have that whole chest part in that. So I think he had the right idea, just keeping that gold. That said, maybe if like, rather than the feet being purple, if the purple was just only kept to just some of these little accents in there, I don't know. It's so unrealistic. I mean, a gold mobile suit as well, probably not the most realistic things, but I can kind of make sense of the idea that all the armor would be gold for some kind of in-canon reasoning. The purple details, though, it's harder to kind of wrap my head around. That said, it doesn't have to be realistic. It can just be a stylistic choice, and that's fine. But yeah. Anyway, otherwise, yeah, I mean, spray painting gold or any other kind of metallic color is always going to be easier, and probably, you know, when done properly, yield better results with an airbrush. So I think it's pretty good results here, considering that it's done with a spray can as well. The gold, especially, more so than the dark gunmetal, I feel like. But yeah, well, there's a little bit of silvering up on these decals up there on the clay bazookas, but other than that, I mean, the decals all look pretty good. So that was Brian's Hyakushiki, and let's see. I know that Marine is here as well, so we'll take a look at his. We just have one image here from Marine, which it's only one image, but I'm actually pretty interested in here. I find this quite interesting. So let me show this here for you guys. So this is obviously a custom build, kind of work in progress. I feel like it's at that kind of like sketch idea phase, right? Let me see. Just according to his notes here, He said the idea is to make a heavier Cysalis, basically just doubling the binders, bazookas, and shields. But how will it hold the shields? It won't. They'll be self-propelled drones, funnels. I like that idea. Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely go for a custom color scheme on this, and I'll likely swap the faceplate or even the entire head. Not a fan of the GPO2 head. It might be a ground type or a core Gundam head. Yeah, I totally get the inclination to want to change the head, especially on the high grade. I've always felt the high grade proportions are pretty ugly, especially a head. It's got a big head. But the doubling up of the binders and the bazookas, I think, looks really cool. Sort of gives me, just because of the fact that it's so like heavily loaded, sort of gives me a little bit of what's that? It's not like a series or anything. It's just like a series of illustrations. What is it? With that Gundam with like the gigantic shield and gigantic boosters on the backpack, and the Dom without any legs, and also has like a huge cannon. It's like the Dom is like called the Jupiter something, Jupiterus or something like that. What's that called? Hopefully one of you guys can help me out in the chat. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. Also, the idea of having the shields as just like funnels also, I think, is a really interesting idea as well. Not sure the ground Gundam head will match quite well. I think just based on like the concept of it, I think the core Gundam head probably will fit the design a bit more. But yeah, experiment with some different head options there for it. I think that would be cool. Other than that, I really like the concept. I want to see a bit more exactly how the binders are connected on here. So we'll say this connection arm that you've got on here at the moment is not the most attractive looking thing as far as I can tell. It's kind of hard to tell though. And ideally, hopefully you want that aspect of the build to kind of blend into the background a little bit anyway. And so hopefully you can figure something out that's just kind of going to do what it needs to do, which it has a pretty hard job of holding those binders up. And also look good. You know what I mean? I would say I would swap the back binders, because you know how it's got like they're not completely symmetrical, right? There's a kind of extra little thing on the back, right? I would keep that on the back for the back boosters as well. How you have it right now, they're kind of both on the inside right there. See what I mean? I would the back set, I would swap those so that the extra booster on the back side of there is on the back, and then on the back as well. I think would kind of make a little bit more sense. But I really like the concept. I think it's a really cool idea, and especially in like a pose like this. Ultimately, once it's done, I think it'll look really cool. Gonna be, not like the most difficult, like custom kit bash, but you certainly have your work cut out for you. Just in I can just see right off the bat, there's plenty of seam lines to do, especially on those binders, on the bazookas, and then on the kit itself, I'm sure there's even more. So, being based on an older HG kit, there's going to be plenty of seam line work to do. But I think it looks pretty cool. What's the name of that? Oh, I can't remember. That Gundam, it's like something train related. I feel like why am I thinking of something with the train? Give me a second. Let me see if I can't find it here. Gundam giant. I'm just gonna search with giant fuel tanks. I don't know if that's gonna give us what we want, but there's certainly not too many Gundams that have gigantic fuel tanks and gigantic shields, but I'm not finding it. I don't know. Damn. Let's see. Gundam Dom armor. No, I can picture it exactly. The Dom, it's like a dark bluish color and has no legs. It's like a kind of a mobile armor, like a deep striker version of the Dom, sort of. There's also a Zaku with a giant bazooka like that, basically with this bazooka. Solomon Express, thank you. That's why I was thinking train related, because it's Express something. There you go. Ah, God. All right. Thank you, guys. All right, so here, I'll show this to you guys just so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Oh no, I just closed that, didn't I? Here, let's see. All right. Is there a draw C in Solomon Express? I don't remember about that. Anyway, yeah, here. So like, it's the Solomon Express Gundam. Looks like that. So kind of very heavily equipped. And the Zaku, as I was talking about here, Zaku with the massive bazooka there like that. Is that a camphor as well? Interesting. And the Dom that I was talking about, like this is sort of like more of like a Rick Dom, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, so that could be something to look to for like some inspiration for this build. As far as I know, there's not anything like funnel type equipment like you're thinking about doing with the shields. But I mean, just as far as like massive equipment and weaponry, I think that's something that immediately came to mind anyway. There's nothing. No, a friend asked, since when the Solomon have a train station? The express part of the name makes me think of, train. So anyway. All right. So let's take a look at Mafu here next. Who's also here in the chat with us, and was working on a old 80s kit of the Big Zam. I'm still convinced that ultimately someday, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get an HG of the Big Zam. I really don't know why we haven't got one at this point, because it's such a well-known and like important mobile armor, I don't know, in the story of like first Gundam. And yeah, it's big, but I mean, we've seen big HGs before, and now with the fact that we're getting the Destroy Gundam out, a massive HG, another massive HG, as well as even like not quite as massive, but that other new one that was that was just announced, that red one. It's like not really so much of like a mobile armor, but it has like a lot of stuff going on. But the Destroy Gundam, for one, is a perfect example of a very large HG. And if they can make that, you'd think they can make let's see, let me find this. You'd think that they could make a Big Zam as well. So all right, let me find, here we go, Mafu's description here for this. So what he was doing with the Big Zam here was making it was like a Race Queen Hatsune Miku themed version here. So it's a little project to get back into airbrushing, not working with one for about half a year, he said. This is an old 1/550 scale Big Zam kit with some updated joints inside the legs, as well as using metal thruster update parts. The new joints are used from the IBO Gundam frame, and the paint job was inspired by the Race Queen Hatsune Miku 2022 version, as I said. Just added some random sponsorship decals on it as well. Due to the size limitations, he's going to send this as a couple of parts. So yeah, anyway, I think this looks pretty good here. Let's see, it was airbrush. I think it could still do with some more like detail painting in and around these parts. Also, I can see the combat with the dust is very real. Maybe pets, or anyway. One thing that you can do for that is some people get those like dish drying racks. I'm sure you've probably seen them around. and people use those for keeping their parts in, like while painting. Normally, if you're just painting lacquers, usually lacquer paint goes on and dries fast enough that like even if like while the parts like right after you paint, once you put it on there, unless there's like immediately dust landing on it, it's probably not going to get dust sticking on it. I mean, one thing that you can do is when you go to spray the part, if maybe like while the part's waiting to be sprayed, if it had dust on it, and then the worry is then like spraying the paint on there while there's dust on there, and basically the paint's like locking in the dust and messing up your paint. One thing that you can do with your airbrush is if it's a dual action type, you can just press down on the trigger and that will only shoot out air and no paint. Maybe like do it off to the side just in case to make sure there's no paint coming out. And then you can just use your airbrush to just spray air and just kind of spray the dust off the part before you start spraying the paint. I do this sometimes. Usually it's not a problem. And this dust looks like it's just like from later on. Like I don't think it's like in the paint or anything like that. But anyway, as I was going to say, the detail painting, I think it would look nice to, I think, paint in some more of these details a little bit. It looks like it's pen aligned a bit. Maybe it's kind of hard to tell if it's like just like a shadow or some like light gray or just kind of like gray pen aligner there. But it looks like maybe this like black detail and maybe up in around the front here is also maybe just hand painted in. And maybe this like light green in there as well. Can't tell if that's masked. It looks like it might be masked. Yeah, I think so. And then here on this part as well, where like the masking didn't come out quite perfectly and looks like kind of the edge is not quite straight and round in and around those parts. For the circle bits, I'm not sure. I can't tell, and maybe if you can let us know if that these parts were also masked or just hand painted in. If hand painted in with like acrylic or something like, or acrylic or enamel, you should be able to go in and just kind of clean that up around the edge there a little bit. But basically just some of the lines between the colors, not super clean. But I think it's an interesting concept to like a Race Queen Miku color scheme on a Big Zam. Certainly very unique. So I'm a fan of that. Let's take a look at the joint modification here in the legs. Say it said using parts from the HG IBO kits. Again, speaking of seams, like on the last build, some rough seams on here, I'm sure, with it being an old 80s kit. And just based on like kind of what I can see here of this, here's some more work in progress there on the legs. The kit looks like it's not very big at all, like probably about the height of like a HG kit. It's 1 to 550 scale, but just because of the size of the DOM, I mean, it's probably going to be, yeah, about the height, like 5 inches tall, something like that. Not very big at all. He said the great parts were hand painted and with lacquer. So that's always tricky. If you're trying to get like clean lines with hand painting lacquer, it's going to be kind of difficult. You may want to mask. And I mean, people generally think of like masking as a tool used for when you're airbrushing or like spray painting, but you can certainly use masking for when you're hand painting as well. And maybe Mafu, maybe he did for some of these parts, but I mean, obviously it looks like the paint kind of bled through some of the mask here on like the green stripe, for example, or some of those other parts. And I think you could have even taken it a little bit further with the marking decals as well, just to kind of really sell like the race look of it with like some more kind of logo decals around on it. Oh, there's a couple here on the bottom, I guess there. But yeah, I think like some more added here onto the side to really kind of push the race aesthetic of it. And there's those metal parts used for the thrusters underneath too. Shame, like those look cool, but the looking, just because of the design of the kit, you're not really going to see them too much being located there on the bottom. But also like painting in some of these details, either with some just pen aligning or just some like enamel paint or something like that, filling in these little holes kind of along there and then around like where the mono-eye would be. I get that since he was doing something different, maybe didn't want to have a mono-eye. And that's not really necessary, but at least I think just painting those in, I think would look nice. And like this little kind of missile bit here, right there on the front. So there's a couple little things here and there that I think could have been done to just kind of further the look of it. But yeah, at least just for like a fun, like a unique concept project, I can certainly appreciate that aspect of it. Don't think that I've seen too many like Race Queen Miku themed color schemes. And basically it just means it's just like a mix of white, black, and neon green, essentially, right? So let's see. So as far as like the decals go, he was trying to match the placement according to the Miku design. So maybe the source material that he was basing this design off of didn't have a lot of markings on it. So yeah, I understand. Definitely a cool idea. Very interesting, very unique. Speedabaka asked, how late am I? Looks like we've been going for just about 30 minutes, so not too late, though we are about halfway done at this point. We have 6 entries to look at. We've looked at 3 so far. So up next, we're going to be taking a look at Tanuki, who I believe is also there in the chat as well. I think I saw Tanuki in there earlier. I'm going to pull up information for this one. 7 entries, actually. There's one more. We have a late one that I'll try to get in for us here at the end. Let me see. Let me present this here for you guys. So this one is work in progress on an ARC-78-2 Gundam. As you can see, kind of the main work in progress that we're seeing on this so far is just extensions to the legs and the waist and the arms. Actually, so let me check the email. You already said this is my first time ever doing Gunpla custom work, so it's not super fancy at the moment, but I'm proud of it nonetheless. My goal is to try and make Kunio Okawara's Gundam redesign, which I believe is featured in the original HG manual, the one with the blue stripes. I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to let's see if I can look it up here. Kunio Okawara ARC-78-2 Gundam with the blue stripes. Let's see if I can find that. What is that? Okawara makes some goofy designs. Not seeing it right off the bat, but maybe this one's okay. I'm guessing this is the one he's talking about. Okay, I think I found it. RX-78 Gundam specifications there. Okay, I'm guessing that's what he was talking about. Okay. Overall, the height has been increased by 6 centimeters with 6 millimeters. Sorry, 6 centimeters would be quite a lot. 6 millimeters and 2 millimeters in the upper and lower legs, 2 millimeters in the torso. So giving it a total height adjustment. So, oh, excuse me, guys. I'm tired. You can see the 2 millimeters added at the thigh, 2 millimeters added at the shins, and then 2 millimeters added at the bottom of the torso there. The arms were also lengthened, but obviously that's not going to change the head height of the kit. Likely going to use some thin plastic to fill in those gaps at the sides of the cockpit hatch, and pick up HG Gundam Revive to transplant the leg joints to help fill those massive open areas in the intragrade legs and fill in the holes in the back of the rear skirting, as I don't plan on giving this a bazooka. Other than that, I can't think of much else to change. What do you think? I'm planning on getting into other customs. Okay. First of all, proportionally, I think it will be interesting to see how this looks painted. Looking at it, I think when it comes to like lengthening the proportions, I think generally it's probably going to be a better idea to choose carefully where you're extending. Because if you just extend everything, it's just going to look like a stretched out Gundam. So I mean, because we have extensions here and here and here, it's just kind of stretching out the entire design, and the arms as well. It's kind of all adding into that. So I'll have to see like how it looks painted. It might, I feel like, and I kind of worry that it may just look like the entire thing's just all stretched out, but I think it'll probably look okay. I think it'll be fine. But it's just something to keep in mind. when you're doing your proportion changes like this, is to kind of choose one maybe particular area you want to accentuate. Generally, people go for the legs. The torso is another one, just kind of depending on the design of the kit. So this is the entry grade, and he was talking about the gaps here. So yeah, there's a couple things that you could do. I mean, I would look, if you guys, not only Tanuki, but if any of you guys, if you missed the last MOOC review that I just put up the other day, yesterday morning, was a book review taking a look at it's all about the entry grade Strike Gundam. And I swear I did a book review of the RX-78-2 version of that as well. But after looking around everywhere on YouTube, I cannot find it. And like in my own kind of like YouTube studio kind of part, I cannot find the video. I swear I made it, because then I made another video where I kind of like demonstrated a bunch of the techniques from the book. And at the beginning of that video, I said, oh, we recently took a look at this book. But then that video doesn't exist anywhere. So I don't know what happened. But anyway, the entry grade Strike Gundam book that I just took a look at would probably have a lot of good, interesting ideas for you as far as like modifications to parts of the kit. Like, for example, this joint part right here. I mean, I think you don't necessarily need to worry about, feel like transplanting the knee joint from another kit into this is just kind of a really too difficult modification. And there's probably a lot of other easier ways to go about modifying this, where you don't need to necessarily go through all the work of completely transplanting the knee joint from a different kit, where all the connections, everything's going to be entirely different, especially like compared to the entry grade here. Hello? I heard somebody knocking. Anyway. So, but yeah, and then the question is, okay, so then which way do you want to take it? One of the questions would be, is how much of the articulation do you want to maintain? If you're not really that worried about keeping the articulation of it, that really frees you up to a lot of options, because then you don't need to worry about keeping this as a functional joint if you really only want it to stand there. I mean, one of the things that you could do is, I mean, just because the joint's already sealed up, that's the problem too, is that this is something that you kind of have to think about ahead of time, because if you want to do anything on the inside of this part, the part's already sealed, so you can't really get back on the inside of that unless you cut this apart again. So assuming you don't want to do that, probably the easiest thing would be to maybe add a detail part, something onto the bottom of this gray piece, and just to make it look like it's not a part of the gray piece, but have it like kind of like be sticking out backwards, so that it kind of fills this space where it looks like it's just an additional internal detail part there, when in fact, as far as like what's actually going on with the model, it's actually attached to the bottom of this to that gray piece there. I think that would probably be the easiest way. Getting that to look good, it just kind of depends on what you end up using for that. Another option would be to just get like a little gray vent piece, like one of these. Here, let me show you. A whole box of these. One of these kind of vent pieces from Kotobukiya. Wave makes them as well, although I definitely prefer Kotobukiya's more. Like one of these guys. Let me put myself back on screen here. One of these. And one of these like little square ones would probably be pretty close in size to what you're looking for. And you may have to like, let me put this back on screen there. You may have to cut this a little bit to accommodate for that. I mean, but you could just add like a vent detail right there, something like that. That's something kind of easier. And it just kind of depends on what exactly you're looking for. If that works for you, it's something you could try. But no, honestly, I think, yeah, attaching something onto the bottom of that gray piece is probably the easiest way to go, and I think would look pretty good. But yeah, take a look at that video. That yeah, piping is another thing. Hose piping, yeah, that could work as well. You just like this surface right here, or I mean, I was gonna say file that flat. You don't even really need to do that. I mean, but right here at the bottom, well, okay, there's a number of ways you could do it, but here at the bottom, drill a couple holes here. So like 1, 2 holes right in there. And then have piping, just some hose detail coming out of there and then going down underneath here. So it looks like this gap is here to accommodate the space for the hosing to go down and into the leg, something like that. Yeah, it's an interesting idea too. Another thing would be to have holes like at the top of here or like in the back of the thigh or something. Have it going all the way down across, like over the back of this joint. Maybe a little much, but it's something I mean you could look at. But yeah, take a look at the video that I just did. Take a look at the video that I just put up yesterday of the entry grade strike book, especially in the later builds, because it kind of goes through 10 builds, increasing in difficulty. So like the more kind of customizing, scratch building kind of part is probably closer to like around the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th builds in that book. But take a look at that. You might see something that would work for an interesting idea. Where is there other kind of gaps? The gap in the forearm is another one that there's a lot of different ways that you can go about that one as well, and it kind of works the same way. And just look around online as well. I've seen many, many, many different ways that people have gone about filling that kind of, and the same thing for in the torso section there under the the cockpit hatch. But yeah, take a look at that book, the entry grade strike book, because there was a lot of stuff in there just with some kind of fairly simple looking plot plate work that they did to fill gap areas like that on the entry grade strike Gundam. But I mean, it's similar concepts, similar ideas that you could use for this kit as well. So yeah, looking forward to the update on that, seeing how you go about filling those gaps, and then how it's going to look, once it's got at the very least some primer on it, just so it has that uniform look, and we can get kind of a better sense of how the proportions are looking once everything is all cleaned up and everything. The only other thing that I would say to look out for is just to make sure that the line flow is pretty good, because like this one looks pretty good. This one, I'm not sure. It looks like maybe still needs a little bit more work on that, because you need that line by adding that 2 millimeters in there, you're basically like making a gap where normally if you didn't have that line flows smoothly. But basically what you're doing is adding a section in there, so it's going to be like flowing smoothly and then straight and then flowing smoothly the rest of the way. So you have to work on it a little bit to make the line continue in a way that looks natural after adding that 2 millimeters of just flat space in there. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that comes out. Speedabaka also bringing up the interesting idea of making it a Thunderbolt style cloth joints. That's kind of an easy cheat that you could do. Just kind of pack it with putty and just make it look like a cloth joint. It's pretty simple way to fill gap areas like that. So all right, let's take a look at Edgar's next. And let me get this opened up for you guys, and we'll see. This one is the Gundam. It's a Blue Destiny, right? But it's a kind of custom Blue Destiny here. Let's see. Yeah, that's a good point. Tanuki mentioning that he cut it in a not in a super advantageous spot. Yeah, when you're doing, that's another kind of important lesson to keep in mind too, is when you're doing extensions, particularly like in the legs or the arms where you have to cut a limb and extend it. Keep in mind where you cut, because you're going to have to. It's not just a straight extension. Sometimes if the part is curved or has some other detail or angle or something like that going on, you're going to have to account for that. So that is something to keep in mind. All right, let me see what Edgar had to say about his Blue Destiny here. Colors are based off the Mudrock Gundam. That's why I got confused a second, because when I first opened it up, I was thinking, oh, it's Mudrock Gundam. Wait a second. No, it's not. But as I really like, anyway, he said he chose the color scheme because he really liked the royal blue and yellow combination. And I originally had shoulder-mounted missile pods like the concept art inspiration, but ultimately I felt it gave the build odd proportions. Okay. So he also extended the waist, knees, and ankles to add some height as it gets pretty stocky. Yeah, the HD Blue Destiny kit is pretty stocky. I will agree. So the waist, knees, and ankles have extensions. So I think these are more for this build. It's an interesting one to compare with our last one. I believe he's talking about that he made extensions mostly to like the joints themselves rather than the armor. So let's see. I don't think. Okay, we do have some work in progress in here. So for the waist, you can see it's basically just an extension of the connection piece kind of between the torso, the top half and the bottom half. I think it looks okay. Okay, and anyway, here's like kind of the what he was basing it off of, right? Yeah, the missile pods are a bit much, I feel like, so I understand leaving those off. Yeah, making that extension there at the waist, at like the thinnest part of the waist, it definitely gives it, you know, not quite to the extreme of like Iron Blooded Orphans, but like Iron Blooded Orphans style, like very thin waist section there. And you know, some people like it more than others. I think it works well enough for me because it's really not that noticeable. But I think also adding some extension to the bottom of the torso armor here, I think maybe would have been nice. Just because having them there, basically, it kind of looks like it's like a accordioned out, like the frame is, it's just the frame is stretched out, and maybe not for like any particular reason. So maybe what would have been cool is like not having this whole like the light blue part of it, not having all of that extended down, but maybe just like this front part right here. So kind of, I know this is all one piece, but if you were to add a panel like a 2 millimeters something onto the bottom of this front section, just kind of where you have this panel line right here, and then have this panel extended down just in the middle on the front, something like that, or vice versa. Probably wouldn't work too much vice versa, but you get what I mean. Just the center part, extending that aspect of the armor down a little bit, just to kind of cover that midsection a bit, and just to make it look like it's not just like this section and like a connection in between, kind of, you know what I mean? But the extension to the knees and the ankles, I think looks pretty natural. It's kind of hard to notice. The trouble with the yellow looks really good, difficult color. Yeah, I think the yellow came out really nice. That's true. But here's the trouble with extending the legs. So if you are extending the legs by cutting the armor, like we saw in the previous build, you have to keep in mind like where you cut. This would be a pretty difficult one, especially in the lower legs. The thigh, maybe not so much. That'd be pretty easy, but especially in the lower leg here, there's no like easy area where you could cut and extend this armor. It's a much more difficult section of armor to extend, just because of how like complex the shape is. You would have to cut this up like entirely and do a lot of different work to extend this armor. So therefore, the easier thing to do is to just extend the joint and leave the armor alone. But the problem that you can run into if you do that is then you have like these really long joints, and the pieces of armor, like blocks of armor, just kind of in between, and they look kind of like stretched out. And the armor looks like odd anyway, is how it can look. I think it came out fine in this case, but just saying, like, in other situations, that is something that, yeah, you do want to look out for. Probably if you wanted to extend the armor itself on this, probably the easiest way to go about that would have been to just add to the bottom of it, rather than just not even cut it at all, but just add to the bottom, just to extend the length of the armor just by adding to the bottom of that calf armor, essentially. But yeah, wouldn't have been easy. You can kind of see it here, where like the knee joint, just depending on the pose here, the knee joint looks just a little bit too long. and that's just because of the extension. Unfortunately, we don't have any more work in progress other than this to kind of see what exactly was done to extend the knee joint and the ankle joint. I can kind of imagine what he did for the ankle joint. Is it just an extension? Like you have this like gray piece right there, and up above that, there's like a couple of layers added or something. And you can see it here in the thigh as well. Like, for example, you can see how there's that little gap right there. I think that's because the extension to the frame of it, as it were, the knee joint, is at the top of the knee, at like kind of inside where the thigh is. So that's why it's making that little gap right there. So otherwise, I mean, I think when you're looking at just the silhouette of the Gundam, I think it came out fine. It looks good. Just in terms of like the build itself, just like the concept of the build, I agree. Leaving those big, massive missile tanks, missile pods off the shoulders, probably a good idea. It's a little bit much, but what you do have going on here, I think, works pretty well for the design. I mean, having the double beam rifles on each arm, and then just over the shoulder the single cannon, and then like the camera array for the cannon. I think it looks pretty cool. And yeah, the yellow came out nice. Yeah, yellow is a challenging color to do, but I mean, really not that much if you know what you're doing. I mean, it's a matter of, having the right color as your base color below the yellow. So long as you're using like white or pink or, I don't know, yellow primer. I mean, you could certainly have like a yellow surfacer. Whatever you're using for your surfacer under the yellow is what's going to make all the difference as to how easy or difficult it is to paint your yellow. If you're working with gray or black primer, it's going to be more difficult. Yeah, depending on the look that you're going for. I mean, you certainly can do it. I'm not going to get too much into that, but yeah, if you're working with like a really dark primer, you can certainly make some cool yellow with that. But yeah, it's like a totally different technique. One thing I would suggest is to just drill out that hole in the cannon. I mean, this is something that you can only see from certain angles, but I mean, you can certainly kind of see it from here or there. It's kind of depending on where you're looking. But another just kind of easy modification, just get a drill and just drill out that hole in the cannon just to make that look more convincing, like an actual cannon barrel and not like just a little dip in there. But no, I think the colors came out good. The decals also, except for the fact that on the shoulders there's these dark, I'm like looking at this trying to figure out what they are. There's these really dark gray, if not black, possibly, decals there on the shoulders that are almost invisible. So like thinking about it realistically, there's not really any point to having markings on there if the markings aren't visible. So probably wouldn't have these dark color markings on the shoulders, and they're like just looking at the kit a bit distracting because I keep seeing like these little bit of like these big markings kind of poking out there, but I can't quite see what they are because number one, they're blocked by the equipment, which is fine, but then they're just like so dark that they're just kind of hard to see right in there on the shoulders. Also, I think like some nice work of painting the cameras over here on this side, but then you missed the camera on the top of the bazooka itself. And I think there's probably some more opportunity to just to kind of make some of the panel lining a bit more visible here on the cannon. Let's look at some other pictures. Yeah. Because like around here on the kit itself, like you have some areas where like the panel line's quite dark and very easy to see in some areas, and then much less so in other areas. So just to kind of maybe make sure that the panel lining is kind of makes sense and is kind of uniform. Like in here, like this little detail on the side skirt doesn't look like there's any panel lining in there at all. And then yeah, up here on the cannon looks like there's some areas that could use with some more panel lining. So especially when you have these large areas of gray and there's a lot of details there, you want to make sure that's pretty well defined. Edgar's just joining us, so while we're taking a look at this, Edgar, if you missed kind of the beginning portion of me talking about your build here, you can go back. But yeah, just to last couple of points, I would just say just making sure that the panel lining is pretty well and uniform over the kit. Now panel lining is technically a form of weathering, so it may not be perfectly uniform over the entire build, but considering like the style that you're going for with this, as it's meant to be like a clean build, usually you want, I mean, it does make sense for it generally to be like pretty uniform in the panel lining over the entire thing. Like some sections look like there was more panel lining than others, like here on the head, like these parts, there's panel lining here on the face vent, but then like around the like the barrel, there's like a little dot right there, and for the barrel, the Vulcans, but like around the Vulcan, or there's also an opportunity where you could have painted in just like with a little bit of some enamel paint and like a very, very small brush, could have like painted in the tip of the barrel of the Vulcan there, just to add some nice detail to that. So there's some little details here and there, like here on the weapon as well. Just like some of these little details, bringing those out with a little bit of detail painting, I think would look nice. But overall, and like the concept and the colors and the decal application, everything I think looks good. There's room for some small improvements just in the details, panel lining and detail painting, I think, on that. But it's a cool concept. I agree. The Blue Destiny's, I don't know why. I guess that's just the design of the Gundam. It's kind of bulky design, stocky design. Yeah, it doesn't really appeal much to me, and a lot of it is due to that. But all right, that means, well, we've got Chris's, and then we also have, let me see, Tyler's here. Let me just pull this up real quick. We'll take a look at Tyler's here first. I'll save Chris for last to make him wait. I think he's still in the chat. Tyler's Nu Gundam here, and this would be the master grade or real grade. I think real grade, actually. Let's get the photos here for us, and we'll take a look. Entry grade. Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, so the entry grade Nu Gundam, but it certainly looks a bit more detailed than regular. Oh no, sorry guys, bear with me a moment. This was a kind of last minute entry that I wanted to get in here for Tyler. There we go. That's what I want to do. Okay, share screen. All right. That's what I want. Just want to move that a little bit. And he said just the entry grade Nu Gundam and condensed light hanger base, both with a lot of custom stuff. Totally some slop in the work as I was learning to add denser details. So yeah, I mean, just considering the fact that my first impression just looking at this was that it was, I first thought it was a master grade, and then I thought possibly the real grade. But yeah, considering, yeah, I mean, now looking at it more closely, I can see it's definitely custom scribing and stuff, like just added parts, like the metal parts added on there. It's just the custom parts added onto the entry grade. Seeing a lot of entry grade stuff here today. Talking a lot about it anyway. But let's take a look. So the scribing itself, taking a look at this, and the scribing looks pretty well done in terms of just like the lines. Maybe there's a couple of rough spots here, a couple of rough lines maybe here and there. I think probably the main thing would be to work on is just kind of just practicing that. I mean, that just comes with practice. But I think the other thing, aside from just the technique of the lines themselves, but also the concept of like choosing where you want to place panel lines and how you want the design of the panel lines to be, like where this is going to go and where this is going to zig and where it's going to zag. It looks like you were maybe looking to I'm not sure if maybe there was a particular custom build that you were looking to like for inspiration for this. It's kind of like sort of similar to the Verka as far as I can tell. But anyway, some of the panel lines, I think like the placement of them, some of them works better than others, I think. Like, for example, around on the lower leg, I think just the design of the panel lining around here, I think all works pretty well. Like here for this detail, because I mean, just you have to think about it realistically and like why this would be a separate panel sort of thing, like, right? So like with this panel right here, there's this section, but then it's not, it looks like you masked that, but there's no line there where there should be like an actual panel line there to make it so like that this section is one panel and this back section of this dark blue part is a separate panel, which I think could kind of make sense. You could probably even separate it here, like putting a panel line right there and then a panel line right here, so that they have like this thin piece of armor, which is just kind of like between the vent and the white part. And then this panel of armor behind the vent, and then the main larger panel. But then like this other panel line just kind of cuts straight across there and seems a bit nonsensical. Kind of the separation of that, at least if it had kind of like, if it followed the line. So the lines all kind of have to like have a flow to them. And there's some of these that like kind of don't follow the flow of some of the other lines. You know what I mean? It's like these ones here, this one and this one kind of have this like upward movement that just kind of follows along with the shape of this part. And this one that cuts off to the side doesn't follow like kind of any shape around there. You have like the vent, which goes at an angle this way, and the shape of the blue part that goes at an angle that way. There's nothing that kind of goes like just straight across like that. You get what I mean? So there's this whole kind of like theory to panel lining, and kind of they have to sort of follow a shape in order to be like visually pleasing on there. For the most part, I think it looks pretty good. There's probably a couple here and there that I think maybe could have been done a little bit differently. But I mean, certainly a good effort. I mean, you can definitely see there's a lot of work there, and it's a great kit to practice on too. I mean, people talk about like excusing away that they're buying bootlegs in order to practice on them, but I mean, if you want to have a kit to practice on, just get an integrate kit. So it's a great practice kit for that. This is another example of something that I feel like I talk about quite frequently too, is make sure that you paint like the underside of armor parts. So like in here, inside the shoulder armor, if having that rather than being just like this empty white space inside of there, if that's painted in like just a dark gray or something, usually kind of whatever color matches your inner frame, or a darker color. On the inside of like the shoulder armor, usually like on the back side or inside of the skirting armor as well is another common spot where you'd want to do that. Also like on the underside of some of these panels, like here on the leg, like right there, anywhere where you're going to see the backside or underside of an armor panel. Kind of depends, but generally it's a good idea to paint in those areas just to make them a dark background area inside of there. I think the use of the detail up parts works pretty well. As you can see there, I think there's one right there on the toe, on the foot. There's also detail parts added here on the front, and I believe on the back as well of the forearms. I think that's another one right there as well. And yeah, up here. I think those all blend pretty well, so nice use of those. The color scheme generally, I think also looks nice. The color is chosen with that kind of slightly warm off-white for the main color. It looks nice with the kind of orange-yellow color and the dark navy blue. Also, the use of the metal parts for the thruster bells, both in the legs and the backpack, I think looks pretty good. So, I mean, and then the LED added in there as well, of course, also cool. And the kind of hanger base background makes for a nice background rather than having just the kit on its own and just kind of like no background. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how much work was put into the base, but considering that's meant to just be the background, it kind of doesn't really need to have a whole lot of work put in on it. And you can see like there's some like mold line, something there. I won't talk like too much on the background, but maybe just like filing out some of the mold lines on there maybe would have been good. But like I said, it's meant to just kind of be there as a background. So that's fine. But I think both the panel lining technique in terms of just like the actual physical process of doing the panel lining and like deciding where to put the panel lines just needs some practice. But otherwise, I mean, it's certainly certainly a good effort there. So last thing I'll say is just about some of these details, because it looks like there's a little bit of multi-tone white here for the armor. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm not quite sure if there's like a pure white and an off-white here. Kind of looks like this up here too, like these sections are slightly off-white, maybe, which I'm all for that being very, very subtle. There is a couple little bits here. I'm not sure if these needed to be as dark as they are, like these little bits added onto the front square. I think those will look okay. This part here, I'm not as sure on, this really dark gray part, because if it's meant to look like it's just like a part of the frame, I think it needs to be like cut out and recessed a bit more, because it's like on the same surface as the armor itself. So like if it was a part of the frame kind of poking through there or something, it needs like some other kind of detail or something kind of indicating that it's a part of the frame. As it is now, it just kind of looks like it's just like a section of the panel that for some reason is painted in this really dark gray. You know what I mean? So it needs something to kind of differentiate that part a little bit more, I think. It's really kind of like the most notable part. There's a couple little bits of like that dark gray silver in and around some other different areas, but overall, I think it looks good. Yeah, very cool. Very nice. Tyler said there are 2 tones of white. Admittedly, it wasn't as dark as I would have liked it. No, I think the more subtle, the better. I mean, honestly, it's, in my opinion, it's better that it's more subtle than being too dark, because I mean, if you've seen these episodes or like other different videos that I've done talking about the subject, so many times I feel like I've talked about seeing builds where the tones were too contrasting, and I think it's not good if they're too different. I mean, just look at like looking at like Bandai's stock, like out of the box RG kits is a great example. You usually don't see the colors that are like really that different. They are usually pretty close. All right, Chris is up last for today. Ready, Chris? I'm not sure if you're still in the chat, but that's okay. Chris submitted some work here of, big surprise, some resin kit work here. It's the Yujiao Land Dark Matter Exia. So this is a resin conversion kit for the master grade Exia, I believe. I don't think it's full kit. I think it's a conversion kit, but we can see. Working on making sure the balance of colors is good. He said the client is wanting a color scheme based off of a League of Legends character. So incorporating those colors was important. The colors are a bit contrasting. I didn't want to go too overboard. Speaking of contrasting colors, here's a good example of that. So that's what Chris is worried about on this. Let's see. And the second submission isn't mecha, but it's my first real-life automobile, making sure the surface paint is as reflective as possible before clear is applied. So yeah, I was quite shocked to see this. Someone daring to enter a car model here. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to offer too much commentary on this, Chris, other than, yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, I get the wanting to make sure that it's very smooth, because you have to get that car finish. You do have to do a lot of prep work, I know, especially on these body parts. But I mean, it looks pretty cool, I think, so far, I guess. Sure. Yeah. I think it looks good, especially the handle. Like, looks really nice compared to like these, like the panel lining around on these areas here. I'm not sure if it like makes as much sense. I'm guessing that there's still more work yet to be done on these, because I think having just the panel lining there and not having those like bolts painted in like a kind of silver color, like to match the handle, I think will look good. But assuming that there's not going to be that, it looks like kind of like a bit too dark. Like the scale is wrong. It kind of looks out of scale, that there wouldn't be that much like shadow in and around these little parts. But if those are going to be painted, I think maybe it's going to make more sense. It's also just kind of hard to tell with the kit. I mean, not seeing the full thing, but that's like kind of my impression, is that those are maybe a bit too deep and dark, those sections. But as for the Exia, yeah, I don't think that the colors are too contrasting at all. I think like here's a good example of having the multi-tone color, but I think that works fine. I mean, it's very apparent that it's multi-tone, so I mean, it's not very subtle, but I mean, the colors go well together. So I think the placement of them and the ratio of the colors is also an important thing. So you want to make sure like you have your primary color and your secondary color, and like kind of the ratio between them should be at a level that kind of makes sense. You don't want to have it basically be like 50-50. It's usually not going to look very good, kind of just depending on the design, but kind of generally for a Gundam design like this, you want to have like your main color with much more percentage than your secondary color. And I think the main red color looks nice. There's a good amount of that darker red in there though, spaced out between different areas, but I think in particular with the leg, that does look good. I would even, I mean, yeah, to be honest, I would even maybe get rid of this dark red right here, because you have like a nice flow going on with the darker red being as like the kind of edge accent color for some of these armor panels, like here, 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 and then it kind of makes sense on these parts in this upper part. But then having it on the lower part as well, I'm not quite as sure about. It does feel a bit like painting in a separate color just because the panel line's there. So if we have this panel line already here differentiating the panels, like therefore it might as well be a different color. It kind of feels like that, where I think that this could probably just be the main red and not the darker red. Is my feeling on that, this particular part. And as for the rest of the kit, I think the leg is what we have the most kind of close-up photos on, but let's see what we can see here with the rest of this. I mean, honestly, kind of here on this, I don't know the source material this is meant to be based off of, with this being a commission, and it needs to be based off of some, what did you say, League of Legends character? I don't know what character, so maybe it does need a pretty good mix of the two reds. But here as well, I think like this part on the shoulder, looks like this part's also a darker red. I think that could also be just kind of the lighter red. I think having this darker red just at that top part right there, and maybe on the top of the shoulder as well, yeah, I think is maybe enough. Having this lower part, just keeping that red, I think in like the lighter red, I think would be fine. So there's maybe I would maybe get rid of a couple of the darker red segments just to kind of give a little bit nicer ratio of red to dark red, I think. But yeah, not knowing what this needs to be based off of, you know, maybe there's more reason to have more of that darker red in there, but I think there's probably a few bits of dark red that I think you could maybe omit and it'd be fine. I would imagine this is already done now, so it's kind of a moot point. It's not like you can go back and change it, I think, but just kind of speaking generally, this is something that, especially when you have kits like this that are really highly detailed, the temptation is there to want to pick out, you know, to details. If you have the panel line there, you might as well make this panel and this panel a separate color, right? And so it's a hard thing to kind of overcome mentally, to think, okay, you know, just because I can doesn't mean that I should, kind of thing, right? And so that can be a challenge, but just kind of depends on what you're going for. Anyway, it's a cool kit. Obviously, we're all familiar with Chris's work. Looks very clean, very nicely painted and everything. Chris works very kind of like one section at a time here. So you can see like this is all the leg. And this high gloss there, I'm not sure if that's a clear part, and I think maybe just like the underside of the clear part is painted, or if that's just a solid part, or it is the clear part and it's just painted over with like a metallic, just like a candy coated blue on that. But anyway, however it's painted, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looks good for that. And I'm guessing maybe it's not done, or since the time when he sent these images in till now, maybe it's done. But at least at this point, I'm guessing it still has the backpack and the weapons and everything else. So It'll be cool to see. But no, I like it. Yeah, but maybe just some minor changes to like some of the placement of some of the colors, I think. But otherwise, generally, like when you're looking at the kit as a whole, like it's different. Like when we're looking at this, or like a detail image of the leg only, is different from when we're looking at the thing as a whole. And when you're looking at it as a whole, where the different colors of red are placed is much, much less apparent. And that's why you want to use colors that are pretty close to each other. Because, when you're looking at it from a distance like this, it just basically looks like just the leg is red, which looks fine. And so the fact of whether this tiny little section of panel right there isn't either the lighter or the darker color red, it's really not going to change the overall look of the kit that much. It's only once you get into like looking really closely and thinking like, okay, where should I have this color versus this color on which panel, whatever. And it's a little bit nitpicky probably, but Chris asked, so I'm answering. Anyway, the top part is painted. It was clear and now candy coated. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like for that clear part. It kind of looks like it's just candy coated. So anyway, very cool. All right, that's it for today, guys. Thank you all so much to those of you guys who did submit. And yeah, I try to do these about once a month. This episode is late. Kind of, as usual, ends up usually being more like about a month and a half or so, kind of between episodes. But anyway, thank you guys all so much. All of my Patreon supporters, and especially those guys who submitted for today's episode. We'll have another episode in the future. So if you guys are interested, you can check out my Patreon if you're not on there already. Or if you already are and just didn't spend anything this time, you don't need to wait for my notification necessarily that an episode's coming. But you can just submit stuff whenever you want. It's fine. But just check out the Patreon rewards for more details about that. And that's going to do it for today, guys. So thank you all so much. Hope you all have a good rest of your Tuesday. It is Tuesday. Tomorrow, live build of this guy. Sorry. Big stretch. This. Yes. I don't want to kind of nervous about holding it up because in the box, there's all these like very, very little pieces in there. And I'm worried about, because I'm using my typical separator box here, and I'm worried about little pieces moving from one section into another if I tip this like that. It can happen. It's not like completely airtight between the different sections there, especially with like the really, really teeny tiny pieces. Anyway, live build tomorrow here of the Black Rex. So, all right. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, the review for the RG Epyon will be up this evening, so look out for that. And other than that, I think probably this Friday we'll finally be ready to announce the next contest. Just working out the last details for that, and we should be good to go. So something else to look forward to by this Friday. Other than that, I think that's about it for today. So see y'all later. Have a great day.